Okay, so here we are. Um, Part 2, Chapter 1. Here we go. Okay, so, it seems like this, Chapter 1, kind of goes back to the TED Talk conversation with Dreyfus, Alfred Dreyfus. I read the first section, and there's a bit more detail on what was going on, and I find it very interesting. So, there's this interesting quote from psychologist Tom Gilovich, which says that when we're confronted with evidence or with information, we ask ourselves, can I believe this? If it's something that aligns with what we want. But when we're trying to find an excuse to reject information, we ask, must I believe this? And I think that's really interesting. I feel like, again, it comes down to the fact of selective, really, being very picky, being very selective about your own beliefs. So, which sometimes can be a good thing. I guess it's interesting because when we are selective, it does mean that we do have certain preferences and we want to leave out some that might be to our detriment. So, for example, if there is a belief that, for example, if I said I suck or I'm no good at A, B, and C, I would tend to be like, okay, well, let's be selective about what I pick and choose, because I could focus on the bad things, but why don't I focus on the good things so that I can build my competence first? Once I'm competent enough, then let's start, addressing things that, are holding, the things that are holding me back from being better. Is it always a good idea to accept everything and not be selective? Again, I really think that this is a nuanced kind of thing where there are times where it's best to, for example, like if you're an actor, but then again, I guess it's how you filter things, because if people do criticize you, it's good to just take in that feedback and then work with it, I guess it really depends on one's sensitivity, to being able to handle the truth. Ultimately, if they are able to take it, it is better, though. I will stand by that. So that's that. So, reading further here, it's interesting because motivated reasoning becomes the next topic. And motivated reasoning is, under the phrase of so many things: wishful thinking, denial, etc., etc. And it's interesting because that term is around us all the time. Scout mindset isn't, which is interesting. Or synonyms for scout mindset, I don't really know of any, which is, again, interesting. Going back to the last video, why is it not such an elementary idea that does seem sensible? Why has it not yet been properly defined? Why is it not in the dictionary yet? What does that say about us as people? Is this really the advent of something that is new, that has not, been looked upon yet? No, it's very interesting. To me, it's fascinating because, I think this is a very, I don't know, it's a critical question to really ask. It's like, wait, why is it only now that I'm kind of hearing about this? We do hear phrases like excellent judgment. We do know about the idea of being unbiased. I think that's probably that's kind of close to what this is, but it's not quite. Because being unbiased, this is kind of like the motivation behind why people would be unbiased would be, to not believe something, even though you might want to believe it, or it works to your best interest for you to believe it. So that is very interesting. So moving forward. So there's a reference here about kind of how society has these interesting biases, how like maybe the baby boomer generation versus the millennials, stuff likewise. And especially when people start, when they take sides with something, like for example, like a political, stance, if somebody messes up and they're not from your party, you see the whole party being corrupt. But if it's just one person from your party if it's one person that's making a bad political decision and they aren't in your party, you just be like, oh yeah, he was just corrupt. So it kind of excuses everything else. There's also a mention of like people being entertained by looking at these things and motivated reasoning throughout time. Back in the era of the Greeks, and then also maybe with cavemen a long time ago, like people must have really been kind of very tribal, like our team versus your team sucks, my team is awesome, kind of thing. And I see this a lot even in the internet. Like if you go to YouTube, and even when you look at like entrepreneurs online nowadays that are selling courses, one of the best ways that they get people to go to them is by saying, oh yeah, well, this guy, he's not that good, but I'm good. So they start throwing shade at other people. Entrepreneurs throw shade at the school system, other entrepreneurs throw shade at other entrepreneurs, as if throwing shade at other people will further validate them for what they're trying to prove. I mean, we see this in politics all the time, How do I seem like a better person? Well, I'm going to throw shade at my opponent. And what do you think now? Join me. Like, this is obviously better because this person sucks. So it's interesting. It's interesting how, it continues. I really like this next portion. There's a lot of wordplay, especially at the very end of this. After Julia brings up a point here. The idea here, reasoning as defensive combat. This idea that when we talk to other people or we get into debates with other people, the English language is very, very, it's very apparent that the English language kind of uses terms, like militaristic terms, in order to describe, how we feel about a belief. Many words that she kind of lays out, and I was reading all of them, and I was like, oh my gosh, well, that's amazing. For example, like someone might poke holes in our logic, right? That's just like one, but there's many, many, many other, words and phrases that do this, that actually, kind of signify that when we're debating with somebody, we're at war with them, and if we surrender, then, we're conceding, for example. It's like a truth is inescapable, So there's a lot of, it's very subconsciously, like, while we talk about how we feel while we're debating, these terms kind of arise. and it's very interesting. So this is very, very, it's going meta. And I believe, again, from somebody who studies and teaches, another language, I know how important it is, the smallest details of how we frame our words, how we talk about something, and what that means when people interpret it. There's an underlying tone when people say certain things. There are nuanced there's hints that reveal much more underneath the surface when somebody talks, more than meets the eye. For me, I also write a lot. I write fiction, and I know the importance of saying something so that it comes across a specific way. And when you're a writer, and whether it be nonfiction or fiction, I believe that there are so many things that certain phrases suggest, so many things that they infer, that on a very subconscious level, you could be sending many different signals to somebody without explicitly writing them down. There's still there's still a message that's underneath the surface that can still be read. So it's very interesting. Anyways, moving forward. This next section is titled, Is It True? And it talks about the idea of, not is it true, sorry. Picard reopens the case. And it's talking about the story of Picard, how he starts realizing something. He was the one who cracked a joke, actually, about Dreyfus when, he was dishonored, publicly. But he kind of, he went back and he kind of looked at things, and he noticed that there wasn't solid evidence that Dreyfus was actually guilty. And there was even a new spy letter that came out and everything. And, he goes back to the guy who, what is it? The handwriter, professional. And he showed him, the new document and the old one. And the professional said, yep, that's the handwriting. But when Picard said, that's not Dreyfus, that's somebody new, the professional was like, oh, well, they just trained somebody, very dismissive of the evidence. And Picard kind of, he fought, he realized that, oh, wait, they convicted an innocent man. And he spent a lot of time kind of fighting for him. And what's the interesting thing is, he was kind of raised with the same kind of prejudices as everybody else, but yet he still was able to see that there was something wrong, that motivated reasoning was kind of happening here, and he was searching for the truth. He said later that it was his duty. He did get Dreyfus out, and everything. But it's really interesting. And I know that this is kind of just like, again, kind of a review from the TED Talk back in 2016. But what I'm getting out of it now, as I'm going through it, what's interesting is that Dreyfus, he really, he didn't think like that in the beginning. He actually was even cracking jokes at Dreyfus before, but he made such a complete 180. And when you actually read the story, it's a lot more detailed, and you're like, oh shoot, like he really, went through a lot, and he actually, he was from the other side. So that's, again, so interesting. So I'm in the middle of, is it true? And Julia introduces this idea called accuracy motivated reasoning. And I think that's very interesting because instead of being kind of preoccupied on an emotional level, it's more of being preoccupied in the level of like, okay, wait, is this really accurate? Or is it inaccurate? Which is really interesting. Also, she brings up the fact that Picard had many reasons not to pursue the truth, because there's a lot of, obviously, his own reputation, but also the Army's reputation. Why go so far to do that when you could sit back, relax, and there will be no consequences for you, right? And what's interesting is it's kind of like this yearning for the truth more than for what you want, right? So, or unless, again, you want the truth, I guess that would mean that, you're in alignment with that. So, but yeah, it's this idea of like, you want to know the truth. You really want to understand it. That's great. This is great. So, going a little bit further into this, there's this contrast between what Julia calls the soldier mindset and the scout mindset. And what's interesting is that, it really reminds me of this video game that I was playing a while back called Valkyria Chronicles. It's kind of like a strategic war game RPG, Japanese RPG. And what's interesting about it is that there are soldiers with different roles, right? So we have the sniper, we have the not the stormtrooper, stormtrooper. So there's a sniper, there's the engineer, there's a force that's kind of like stormtrooper, and then we have the scout, right? Sniper, kind of like is the incognito person who takes care of the stealth kind of assassinations. Engineers kind of like deal with the landscape. If there's mines, they disarm the mines and stuff like that. The shock troopers are kind of like the big buff guys that like imagine football players that just like go through enemy lines and they have all the firepower and everything. There's also the Lancers. I forgot about the Lancers. The Lancers are like, they're basically kind of like snipers, but they have rocket launchers, and they're in charge of taking care of like heavy artillery, like tanks and stuff like that. So basically, soldiers with rocket launchers. But then we have the Scout. And the cool thing about the Scout in Valkyria Chronicles is that when you start off in battle in this game, you have no idea what the territory looks like. You have no idea how the landscape is. You don't know what's beyond that hill, what's beyond that bridge. And you have what the Scouts are blessed with is the ability to, when it's their turn, they can run further. They can go. They were able to just their mobility was amazing. So much so that you can understand the layout of the map. So much faster when you use the Scouts, and if you use them correctly, it'd be easier to devise a plan, because you'd be like looking over the hill and then you see like the enemy army and you're like, oh, they're on one side, and then on the other side, oh wait, there's there's a bridge, or okay, wait, there's a tree here, I can sneak off on this side, and I can really take them by surprise, or I could go around their base if I go here. Or, oh look, there's like a ladder, that descends into the base, and if I take that, we could send our sniper in, and he could like take out like the really powerful guards, so that everybody else can storm, the fort, and we can have a full out victory. This game was such a great game. I played it with, again, one of my best friends, and it's one of the fondest memories that I actually have. I think this game came out in, funny enough, around 2011 or 2010, 2009. Let me see. This happened 2008, April 24th, 2008. So it's almost like the 13, yeah, almost 13-year anniversary for this thing. Oh, but it was so fun. I mean, I didn't play it until like 2010. 2010. But wow, it came out 2008. It's a great strategy game. And anyways, though, that's kind of like the idea that Julia is presenting in this part of her book. Being a scout is about assessing the territory and understanding what is the best course of action to take once you build an accurate view or understanding of your surroundings and your environment. Being a scout is a lot like reading things very well, I think. And reading doesn't just mean deciphering letter combinations on a blank page and understanding what it means. That's not what I think reading really is. I mean, yeah, that is a part of reading, is deciphering random letters, random words, not really random words, but our language is very arbitrary, so there's a lot of like randomness to it. But it's not just about understanding the meaning behind words as they are, but it's about understanding to a deeper level, And when you're playing a fighting game, I know I'm going into video games, but when you're playing a fighting game and somebody beats the heck out of you, there's a line that said like, "I read you like a book." And why did he read you like a book? It's because he understood, or your opponent understood, all your moves, all your options, all your counters, and this player perfectly read what you were going to do and had an answer to everything that was thrown at him. So in that respect, it's the same idea when it comes to reading things, is that it's not just about deciphering the words and what is the word, what is the sentence, what am I reading. It's what's actually going on. And to me, it really seems like having the scout mindset is this idea of really reading into your environment. Reading is not just making out letters. Reading is making out and coming to an understanding of what is in front of you and processing it so that it makes sense, and that you can come to a better understanding of what you're getting into or what's in front of you at that specific time. To me, that's what reading is, and that's why I think reading is such a underlooked skill too, that a lot of people think they know, like, oh yeah, reading, but no, there's so much more to it than that. Being in scout mindset, she writes, means wanting your map, your perception of yourself in the world, to be as accurate as possible. This is interesting, and I think it's great because, again, it comes down to this idea of understanding. The more you're able to understand the nooks and the crannies of anything, it helps you to get around obstacles more. Like the age, like when you get older, you're going to die, or something's going to happen, there's going to be a confrontation. It's very good to know certain things. And the information alone isn't what's important. Anybody could see a screen, anybody can make a map, but it's about actually what you do when you have that information, which is like the attitude of the person who reads. So yes, that is that. So to conclude this section, it mentions this idea of actually kind of being happy when you find out that you're wrong, and that's a great attitude in and of itself to have. Um, if you're in a war situation, you probably should be really happy if you found information that you can improve on so that you're more accurate, because that could lead to better opportunities, and also it could possibly even save your life. So, for example, I don't know, even thinking about if you have a belief that eating kale every day is going to make you live longer, and then you find out, oh, well, it was found out that there's a chemical in kale that's kind of poisonous, and it might actually not help you out. Some people, they're so fixed on a specific diet that if they hear new information, they're like, oh, no, that's probably, I feel good, but do you really feel good? If you really think about it, is it really going to help you? And there's so many people who believe that, in what their diet is, or, oh yes, this is the best diet. People believe even that fasting, not eating at all, is super healthy. Fasting, dry fasting, without eating or drinking water for a few days is very healthy because of there's a new effect that kind of takes place. I'd have to look up the name of it. It's not osmosis. It's autophagy. There we go. Autophagy. So it's very interesting, in terms of what new information can do. It can even save your life, or it can prolong your life, and people who are really fit, very fit and very healthy, they might have blind spots, that they will refuse to acknowledge, but maybe acknowledging that in the end, what is it that you really want? And sometimes you have to put away your pride, so that you can actually obtain what it is you want, or be even better. So there's some really good things going on here with the next section. Your mindset can make or break your judgment. Lots of interesting kind of parallels to Scout mindset and one's working career, how Scout mindset can be used so that it can better your career, so that you can make better judgment calls. Even this idea that, if somebody is a lawyer, Scout mindset helps them more, even though, contrary to what many people might believe, that a soldier mindset might be the best way of going about a case for a lawyer. It's actually better if they do have a Scout mindset mentality. And it's very interesting because, again, it's really about this idea of well, you need to be very aware of the strengths and the weaknesses of your case. And if you're not aware of your own weaknesses, or if you fail to notice them, or if you fail to acknowledge them, then you're in for a rude awakening. And that is true with a lot of things. You might be living a delusional life right now, and you might be believing what it is you really want to believe. But if you don't really assess it, if you don't really look at it carefully, one day you might get woken up, in a really kind of shocking way. So I think that's really important. And here's another great point that gets kind of brought up, is the idea that with relationships, very interesting, is that people can skew what's happening, and it can be interpreted different ways. So, for example, somebody who says, "Oh, my partner is nagging a lot," uh, the same situation can be happening to another person, and this other person can be saying, "Oh, my partner cares about me a lot." So it's interesting when you kind of like when you realize that your reality can be skewed by the interpretation or how you frame the information that is being given to you. And it's important to kind of know, like, well, are they really being naggy? Maybe they're being concerned. Or maybe they're not being concerned. Maybe they're really being naggy. And you should talk to them about it. So because we're inclined to kind of adopt a specific point of view, maybe it's good to reevaluate that sometimes and ask, well, is it that way? Or, if we flip it on its head, could it be this instead? I think that's great. Another thing that is pointed out is this idea that if you are actually more open to being to hearing the truth, people are going to tell it to you more. Because if you tell someone like, "Oh, tell me, if anything's wrong, let me know," or "Please be open with me, like you can be honest with me," and if they start telling you things that aren't aligned with what you want to hear, and you start becoming defensive, or you start getting angry, or you start, being passive aggressive, then it's kind of like, well, that's kind of sending a message to other people saying, well, no, there is kind of like, don't really be honest. This person doesn't really want to hear what you have to say. Or if you have to say it, you have to be super careful, but you can't be really direct. And that's hard for a lot of people to frame their concerns in a way that doesn't offend people, or they have to be tiptoeing on glass. So sometimes these things that people would tell you, they never get communicated because it's just hard for you to accept the truth or be open-minded to even change your own opinions. Okay, so I finished the last section here of this chapter, so I'll close up very soon. But what's interesting, and this is kind of, it's really cool, is the idea that, so we've established what a soldier mindset is. We understand what a scout mindset is. And nobody actually is really one or the other. And I think that's what's interesting, is that you can be a scout mindset when it comes to entrepreneurism, but then when you go back home and you're with your family, you could be like a soldier, or it could be vice versa. So, it's kind of admitting that, sometimes we put on caps, and sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. And to be aware of that maybe we're not always, it's like, okay, right now, while I'm, recording this, I can say, you know what, I think I have a completely open mind, and I think, I'm really digging into this book and discovering it. This is great. But what if, I go out there, and I'm in a social situation, and, does that change? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't, and to be aware of that. Also this idea that, well, why is it that soldier mindset is so popular? And what is it that the soldier is trying to really defend? Like, why is this a prevalent thing? And it is very fascinating. So overall, for this chapter, I think it's really good. there's a lot of interesting information that's put out there. Is there anything that I disagree about? I know last time I said that, I'm not going to make it a point, or I will make it a point that I don't agree with everything. I think I even said last time that I'll disagree with a lot of things, although that's going to be kind of hard. I think this is well written. I feel like no, I think Julia covers her bases pretty well. I was going to say that I do think people have more of a predisposition to be one way or the other, but she does mention that. Anything else? So in Robert Greene books, there's a reversal. So the reversal of, what the chapter's talking about, it kind of acknowledges, what the opposite of this is. I don't even need to really go with that because, the scout mindset is already contrasted with the soldier mindset. Can it be good for people to have the soldier mindset at certain times? Well, you know what? I will say this. In an army, in Valkyria Chronicles, the game that I was playing, we had scouts and we had shock troopers, and we did have, snipers, and we had the lancers, who were like the rocket launcher people, I guess you could say. And I feel like in society, to make a full society, a very good and complete society, we need all kinds of people. So while I do believe that scout mindset is something that can be overlooked, I think that the shock troopers, for example, or the soldier mindset, that it does have a place in society. Does it mean that we have to ban them? Or does it mean that we have to make less of them? I feel like they have a place, and I guess a sniper would be more akin to like the savvy soothsayer, who persuasive, the kind of like sneakily or like without your knowledge, he kind of like converts you to their side or whatever. The shady salesperson, I don't know. The rocket launcher, just somebody who just completely just goes off and yells and like makes their point by being super passionate. Maybe like very vocal, like activists in the community. Engineers, people who simply analyze things, and that's all they do is analyze, and they don't take a side. They're just like, look, I'm just going to analyze, that's it. Just to like, again, undermine or like undermine the minds, or like, or to make it so that there's no like so it's not that you're stepping on tiptoeing on glass to get your point across. I mean, I feel like the main question is scout mindset. Is it something universal that we can really kind of like put out there and say like, yeah, everybody should get this? Or should it be kind of a specialized thing for certain people? And Julie does make a point that scout mindset can help with, your job. And she's not pointing out the fact that soldier mindset has to be completely ignored or whatever. So again, this is a very nuanced kind of topic that I'm kind of like bringing up there. But I guess my question is, as good as scout mindset can be for people, is it overall really the best option? Probably the answer is that it's from a case-by-case scenario. But let's see. Let's test that as we continue and journey through this book. So anyways, that's my thoughts. for this chapter. I hope someone was able to get something out of this. Have a good day, and yeah, looking forward to next time.